Hi, and welcome back to the Bigfoot, Wildman, and Boogers TV show. Well, Jennifer, what do you have for us tonight? I know you've been researching. I know you've got some fun facts. So, what are you going to hit us with tonight?
Fun facts. Where the term Booger County comes from.
Yes, let's talk about Booger County.
And Booger County is also known as Douglas County.
Correct.
And, excuse me, that's in the, central southwest part of the state.
Correct.
And so I kind of found a couple of things. I found a story from a gal from the Douglas County Historical Society, from where the term Booger County came from. And locals think it might be because of local boggarts in the area. Restless spirits and ghosts and things. Others think it simply might be because it's a booger to get to. It's very remote, very hilly. It was very difficult for the Scottish and Irish to make a living as, farmers. So from what I gathered, it was just because it's very remote area, and having been out near Ava, the county seat, that it is a booger of a drive out there.
It definitely is a booger, but that's why we love it, because it's hard to get to, it's remote, it's rural, and all of the boogers live out there.
I did find a story about the Blue Man of Spring Creek.
Ah, the Blue Man, yes.
And apparently the Blue Man is 9 feet tall, has dark blue hair, especially in the sun. So he's a day walker. And he's either blue with blue hair, or he wears skins, feathers dyed with berries. That's kind of specific, but no real conclusive evidence, no real physical evidence, just kind of word of mouth stories. Now, whether those are because of, the Scots-Irish folks, brought their legends and stories with them about whatever they see in the woods.
Whatever goes bump in the night.
That's where that comes from.
Well, cool. Well, that's a great way that you started the show off with Booger County, because our guest tonight, my good buddy and cohort in crime, Shane Carpenter, can tell us lots about Booger County. He grew up not far from there. I think it's a little farther over, but Shane is from that part of the country, and that's part of the country that we go into. And there he is, the man, the myth, the legend. There he is. So did you hear her telling about, Blue Man?
I did. There's actually a lot more information than that. You just have to dig. A friend of mine went out to Lebanon, Missouri, and he went to the library there and got into a lot of the old records and lot of the old newspaper clippings and whatnot, and started researching. And he found a ton of information and like many stories where the newspaper was reporting on
Yep.
people, coming out from hunting, seeing this thing. And I've actually been on the property of an old man that, or the old man that was supposedly gifting or trading with this thing for several years, and then it disappeared, and it wasn't seen for quite a while. And then I found through another friend of mine down north of West Plains, Missouri, which is about
Mm.
50 miles, maybe 60 miles southeast of the Ava area. It or one showed up there not too long after the one quit showing up in the Lebanon and Niangua, Missouri area.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so like some of these newspaper clippings literally have like crossroads, and it was near this bridge at this crossroad. So there's some
Oh, sure.
pretty good information there.
Yeah, there's a lot
So
of details.
now a family member of my stepdad actually owns the property where a lot of that trading and stuff from the old man actually happened and went on, supposedly. So
Interesting.
a lot of interesting stories when you
Okay.
get into
Yeah.
the library, start looking at the old all the old newspaper clippings and whatnot. And I think he even had to kind of deep dive back into like microfilm and stuff to find
I'm
those.
sure.
But there was quite a few. I mean, just from that library, I think he found 6 or 7 that the local paper in
Dang.
Lebanon had written about it. So
Well, I know we were told when we were on an expedition over that part of the state that supposedly back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was a gentleman from the South that came up, and he had been a soldier, and he basically, that's where he settled, right? And he started to see this thing in the woods, and he described it that it was so black that when the sun shined on it, it had a blue sheen to it. And so
Okay.
they don't know if the name came from, which they called him Blue, the man that settled there. They called him Blue Saul. So they don't know if Blue Man came from him because he saw it or because it had a blue sheen to it. But, that's just
Sure.
another variation of that story, and it's the same area. But that was a long time ago when that was going on. So interesting stuff.
yeah,
So anyway,
one of one of these stories that was dug up at that library also was these 2 young men were out hunting, and they supposedly treated. They said it was wearing I believe if I remember correctly, it was wearing some kind of skin around its waist
Mm.
that had like a pocket, kind
And
of
carried a club, I think, were other stories
and
that it carried a club or
said
a
that it
log
was
or something.
yeah, and it was wearing skins on its feet also, which
Okay.
is something I've
Shoes.
never
Yeah.
seen or heard, but yeah, it's interesting stuff.
yeah, it is definitely, definitely. Those old stories like that are interesting. When you find those and you can hear those. So, well, Shane, let's jump into it. Let's talk about research tonight. I'm not going to do the stereotypical thing. And how'd you get into this, Shane? You've told that story, and you know
Hundreds
Jennifer's
of
just going to
times.
have to wing a few times, right? She's just going to
Right.
have to wing it here and go along with us. But so let's talk research. So one of the things that I want to talk with you about that I know you have not talked a whole lot about, because for the longest time you were finding them when you were by yourself. And we happened to be with you one time when you actually found the holes. So let's talk about the holes.
Yeah, early on in the 400, I randomly started finding these holes that had been dug, and they would have the sticks left in them. There were several times I found holes with sticks near them or sitting off to the side, but like most of the time, for whatever reason, the sticks would actually be left in the holes. And
How deep are those
they were
holes?
obviously They're not. They're typically not big. I mean, these right here are some of the bigger ones actually that I found.
Yeah.
Usually they're smaller. I would say maybe 6, 7, 8 inches in diameter,
Okay.
and maybe about the same deep. And
What on
you know,
earth?
I was finding these, and when I first started finding them, I mentioned it here and there. I was kind of putting my feelers out to see if anybody else were finding these things, and it also seemed real random, and that was the odd thing about it. So I started really paying more attention, and and looking at what's going on around the time that I'm finding these holes. And one of the things that I noticed was over time was it was usually within 24 hours of a really hard rain that I would find these. Um,
Okay.
Occasionally, we would find tracks near them or in the vicinity or in the area. Usually not. These would be in areas where tracks usually wouldn't be too conducive. Kind of rocky areas or real stiff dirt areas. But over time, another thing that we noticed was we would start finding these holes after we would start finding small tracks. And the few times that we found the small tracks, it was soon thereafter that we would start finding these holes, and we would find them for a length of time, and then we would stop finding them. And so yeah, it was just what's happening, why are these being dug? So you're going
So like
over all this in your head, you're
cash,
thinking,
maybe like a that
or
it doesn't seem
grubs.
very protected.
Our thought was because it was typically after a rain, that maybe they were looking for grubs or worms or
Oh,
something like that. But
oh,
we
yeah, yeah,
never
yeah, yeah.
really we never really found any evidence of
It's
that.
like the diggy,
Um,
diggy. Okay.
yeah, yeah, and one of the guys that researched with me out in the 400 a ton, like basically most of the time I was there, Randy Harrington, um, he had surmised, because the stick was left in the hole, it seemed as though like they were dropping the stick and leaving in a hurry. So
Like
what we
they were
kind of
spooked or
surmised,
come up on or something.
no, no, what we surmised is Randy had heard a story or seen a video. I believe he had heard a story. This guy witnessed a young one sitting doing something, and Mama was doing something else, and she slapped her leg, and it immediately stopped what it was doing and ran to her side. So we kind of
Mm,
thought maybe this is a situation where the young ones are just getting bored or something, like mom's doing something or dad, and they're bored. So they just start digging a hole, or maybe it's instinctual, who knows? But just because the sticks were left in the hole, typically it almost seemed like, they'd be digging and then just drop the stick and leave. So
yeah. Okay.
it's hard to say. We don't really know. We've had lots of ideas and talked about it a lot, but I kept this to myself for a long time because I would always be by myself when I would find these. And so it was kind of like one of those things where if I bring this up, people are just going to say, "Oh, he's digging those holes." It's like he's doing that. It's too easy to fake, you know what I mean? So I just kept it to myself and just kind of kept cataloging when we were finding them, and it always kind of worked out to where we would find these after small tracks would show up. And so then I ended up with Randy Harrington in Oklahoma. We're actually there with our a documentary team that we've been working with, and we ended up, me and another tracker that's from Oklahoma, David Soliday. He was with us. Randy had him meet us out there and go. And our idea was kind of, if there was two of us that were decent at tracking, we could kind of maybe hit both sides of this creek that went out to this forested area that we wanted to get to. So, long story short, on the way out there, we found some possible tracks in the creek but they were in sand and gravel. And as we came up on the bank, we found a track that was about a 9-inch track, if I remember correctly. And then we went around this corner, curved around this corner as we enter this forested area. I mean, I wasn't maybe 20 yards into it, and I looked down and there's a hole with a stick in it. And so we had the film crew with us. We had David Soliday, the other tracker, with us, and I had never been there before. And we found this hole. So now I'm like, oh, I can talk about this. Somebody else was with me when I found these. So I'm looking at the hole, studying it, kind of going over it. And the other two people that are with us, they're part of the documentary team. They follow up behind us. And David Soliday actually goes ahead another 20 or 30 yards, and he finds another one. So now I'm not the only one that's found them. So I can be very open about it, start really asking questions and talking about it. And then fast forward last year the year before, I'm sorry, before the conference camp out, I took Mary and her husband out to the property in Ava where we were going to be camping, and just kind of see the property and get to know it a little bit, go on a little hike, and so they can kind of see what I'm getting them into. Oh, there we are.
Yeah, there we are.
And, so we're working our way up. Yeah. So we're working our way up this hill, and sure enough, we come across two holes, and one of them has the stick in it. So I'm like, holy cow, I've got three people with me. I've got Mary and her husband and the landowner. And the landowner didn't nothing. He knew nothing about these holes at this point, right? So we know he. Right. So nobody faked this for sure. So we're sitting here, and I'm explaining to them about these holes and how I've been finding these for the longest time, for like 4 or 5 years, and just keeping it to myself. And then while we're standing there discussing these holes, back to my right, uphill from us, we hear a quite loud knock, and then we came across some other things too, but it's a whole nother story, kind of off the holes. But yeah, it was interesting, and it was kind of the same situation. It had rained there, I believe, 2 days prior, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So it wasn't within 24 hours, but that was the kind of the way things were happening in the 400 was, it's usually within 24 hours of a rain. And that may have to do with, the softening of the ground makes it easier to dig, or who knows? I have no idea. All I know is that, we had an super active research area. And when we would start finding small tracks, we would start finding these holes. And eventually the holes would stop, as if, the younger ones were doing it, and they get to a point and they just kind of quit digging those holes, which is one of the things that, kind of made us think along the lines that it's boredom. Like, they're waiting on mom doing something and they just start digging a hole because they're bored. Who's to say? No.
Yep. Well, and after you brought that to my attention, I think I was on 3 different expeditions and found holes every time with the stick in them. One was out by the lake, and it was up on the side of the hill, not in a place where like little kids would be going, because I could barely get up there, and it was dug out. And then there was one along a river, and the hole was more like in the side of this little bank dug out, but every one of them had a stick in them, and every one of them had the mud on the bottom of the stick from where they'd been digging. So
maybe that's their chore. Like, it's your chore, like, taking out the garbage or doing the dishes. You have to dig the grubs.
You could dig the grubs.
Yeah, that was my first thought. That was my first thought originally, was, that they were possibly digging for grubs or worms, because it was after a rain, and typically grubs and worms will come closer to the surface during, after a rain, because the ground gets saturated. So
especially down in clay, that clay down there too, it's easier when it's wet.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That nasty hard pad.
And the crazy thing about this is, like, when I first started going out there, I believe it was within the first 3 or 4 months, may have been a little longer than that, because it's been a while, so I'd have to look at the dates on the videos and pictures. But I remember the first hole that I found, it had literally rained until midnight the night before. And I got up early and was out at the property at sun up and started hiking down in. And I remember finding this hole, and I had the stick in it, and like half the stick had mud on it. It was a fairly deep hole,
Okay.
and where this hole was, the night before, water had been running through. It was in between. It was kind of up above a rock outcrop, and so there was a lot of large rocks sticking up, and you'd have areas that were, 6, 7, 8, 12 inches wide, maybe in between these rocks, running down through the top of this rock outcrop. So you could see where the night previous the water had been running through that spot. So I know positively that that hole had been dug sometime between midnight when the rain stopped and when I got there, and the stick was left in it. And so it kind of blew my mind. I just kind of assumed, and my first thought, like I said, was worms and grubs, and that area
Mm.
actually was really soft dirt, so it was like easily dug out, rain or not. But that was my first one, and that actually correlated with a handprint that I'd found up underneath that particular rock outcrop also. And I had one of the first things I did out there was put a maple salt block up underneath this rock outcrop, because I was finding um, bits and pieces of rotted wood on this flat rock that was up underneath it. And that's a whole nother story, whole nother deal, the rotted wood. I actually had a
Oh,
discussion with John Morley about that today.
oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And how's John doing? I haven't spoke to him in a while.
He's doing good. He's doing good. He just finished up a paper that he's getting ready to release fairly soon. It's been put
Is
out
that going to go
for.
on your website, right?
Yeah, yeah, it'll be on our website, and we'll be dumping it in other places also. And we've had a few people that we've sent it to that have signed NDAs, and so they're reading it, ahead of time. It's 30 pages, so it's a lengthy one. And I believe right now he's getting ready to do a kind of a surmise version of it, so that it's not 30 pages, just to like hit all the data points. And
Right, right.
so,
Get it
not
edited. Right.
everybody's going to sit down. He's basically like writing putting out a commercial for it, a shortened version of
Right,
it, and then people
right.
can. And maybe that'll make them want to go read the whole 30 pages, because it's interesting. It's
Yeah,
a great paper. I've been, he's actually rewritten it several times as he's been going through the process, just trying to get it right, and so when that comes out, um, which will be soon, I'm sure it's probably going to get a lot of traction, and it's going to stir up a lot of debate in the community, and which is good. That's what we need. Debate is
yep.
good.
Yes, it
So,
definitely is. Definitely is. So I'm going to pose something to you here. We talked to Larry about this a little bit last week. So it might have been a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago at this point. One night, Larry texts
mm,
me and he's like, "Are you watching Skinwalker Ranch?" And I'm like, "No, but I can be. What did I miss? What's so?" They're doing one of their little experiments that they do, right? And it's along the creek, and they find this scat. It's unusually large scat. It's got their attention. So they gather it, they send it to the biologist. Well, when they get it back, they find out essentially that something has eat a coyote. Now, according to the biologist out there, there's not really anything out there that's going to eat it. There's no bears, and the mountain lions that are out there don't eat that. But the thing that was interesting about it was they found like the guard hairs, which they were talking about. That was kind of unusual. That's not something you normally find because that's not normally eaten. But
Right.
they also found partially digested bones. And they said they don't know of anything that has a digestive tract that can do that. There's not a known animal that does that. And so, where Larry went immediately. He's like, "Well, what do you think?" And I'm like, It's interesting.
Mm.
It's interesting because if they have to eat whatever they can get a hold of, they've got the gut that'll digest anything. And I mean, it makes you wonder because you hear people talk about where they think that they eat bark sometimes. Well, what kind
I
of
was going to
digestive
say, you had mentioned that they had eaten bark. Yeah.
Yeah, well, what I was seeing wasn't actually bark; it was rotted wood, the interior of the trees.
Oh,
Right,
maybe
And
right.
termites?
yeah,
Maybe with termitey bugs? Juicy with
well,
bugs?
no,
No?
actually, mountain gorillas chew on rotted wood, and they get about 72% of their sodium intake from chewing on rotted wood.
Okay.
So I believe it has something to do with sodium, and I mean, if we're on it, I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about it if you want to,
Yeah,
Mary.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that was another discovery that I kind of came across by accident in my first research area. I created my own hike out in this area, and there was one particular down tree that I stepped over every single time I hiked out there, and it was rotting. It was and anyway, one day as I'm stepping over it, I noticed that there's like quite a few big chunks taken out of it. And I didn't think too much of it. And I got a few steps further and I'm like, wait a minute. And I turned around and all the rotted wood that should have been laying around that tree wasn't there. Like if an animal digs into a rotted tree, all the scraps that it digs out are going to be laying there next to the tree. And there was none. And so I
Mm.
thought, well, that's interesting. So I started doing some research. And that's one of the things that I found was that mountain gorillas chew on rotted wood. They don't swallow it; they chew on it and spit it out, and they get 72% of their sodium intake from that. So I just kind of kept that in the back of my head and kept watching this tree just slowly disappear over time. And then fast forward to the 400, um, same thing. I actually, when I first went out there, I was hiking. I set up a hike that covered like a big portion of the property because I didn't know where to look first. I had to kind of figure that out over time. And I found this one particular rotted tree that was being gotten into and didn't have hardly any scraps of the rotted wood around it. And so I started going out to it and keeping an eye on it. And sure enough, one of the times I was like probably maybe 100 yards from it, and I picked up on compressions, and I started following these compression trails, and they led me where I was already going to, and there were three sets of compressions around this thing, and the it was the stride or the width between the 2 feet was larger than what I would normally expect to see, which tells me that they probably squatted down. And these were like literally, like the toes of these compressions were, 4 or 5 inches from the log. There was one on one side and two on the other side, on the opposite end of it. And so, in my mind, I'm pretty positive that they are chewing on rotted wood. I had another situation. It was on the opposite end of the property, and it was an area I don't go into a lot, or at that time I didn't go into a lot. I would just go in occasionally just to check to see because this was an area where they were like coming into the property, and so I find this arch, and it's on somewhat of a slope, probably about slope about like this, and I walk up to this arch and it's pinned down and there's a big butt print in the leaf litter. And next to that butt print is a big chunk of rotted wood, probably, that big. And
Oh.
I look uphill because there's no rotted wood in the area, trees that I can see right around me. I look uphill and there's no rotted trees uphill from it, which for that to get there, it would have had to have rolled downhill, right? If it got there
Yeah.
on its own. But
Right.
you take the arch, and I have to be honest, like I've seen a lot of arches and I've been able to debunk a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
but I have also seen arches that were pinned down. I've seen
Yep.
saplings that were pinned down by down rotted trees that have been there for years, and the saplings are tucked underneath them to hold them down. So you had the arch, then you had a butt print underneath the arch, and then you had this big chunk of rotted wood laying there, and just none of that should have been there, let alone in one spot. So,
well, and was the wood?
Another thing I found. Go ahead.
Was the wood itself? Was it okay? Had they chewed it, or what? Do you think they were getting ready to chew it?
It hadn't been chewed. Well, no, it was
in preparation
it was just a chunk of rotted
okay.
tree, and it was fairly fresh. It was red. I mean, it was in good shape for eating. It was soft, and just a big old chunk of it. Another one of the things that I found with mountain gorillas when I was looking into the salt intake and them chewing on rotted wood is that they will bend over saplings and pin them down, and they will sit underneath them and pick leaves off of the saplings and eat them. Right.
Okay.
This bow was completely bare, no leaves or nothing on it. And I've seen that many of them that have been pinned down have been that way also. But I've also found them, where all the leaves are on them. So I can't say that they're necessarily doing that. Yeah. But this one was bare. It was bare. So it's interesting. And there's been several times on the property, throughout the property, where, we come across these rotted trees that are down, and they'll have big chunks of them out, and there'll be nothing around. The chunks are just gone. So
that's
another
definitely
one of those things that it's one of those things I kind of accidentally picked up on, and I'm pretty convinced that they do chew on the rotted wood at this point.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, humans have used the bark and things, and like you're saying, the gorillas have too. Why wouldn't they? It just falls in line. If we're using our common sense, why wouldn't they? It's like you're talking about, they're getting their sodium intake from it. There's other ones out there that they probably chew on for medicinal purposes too. I mean, makes sense.
Right.
Sure.
And my whole thing with trying to keep up with it at the time was, if I could find a wad of this chewed up, rotted wood, that would have DNA, like crazy amount of DNA in it.
Right.
Saliva, so that was my motivation for like hiking out to these damn rotted trees all the time. Eventually, like, I just kind of fell out of it, and my hike, as I spent more time out on that property and kind of learned where I needed to be and where I needed to have our camp and stuff, it was nowhere near that. So I slowly just kind of quit focusing on that, because we had other activity and other things happening, and that was kind of the least of the craziness that was happening on that property. So, but I still look. Every rotted tree I walk by, I look at it, and if I don't see any tree litter around it, then I pay a little more attention.
I was going to say, I will forever now look at rotted trees differently.
Right. Exactly. So Shane, tell Jennifer how close you've been and how your body reacted to that.
I'm not going to say publicly that I peed on myself, Mary. You're not going to trick me. So
all right.
So this was an ordeal in the 400. I got within about 7 or 8 foot of a juvenile, and myself and Randy Harrington, who was in Dan Nedrolo, we were out. Dan Nedrolo had just gotten there. It was 2:00 in the morning, I believe, when he got to the nearest town where I was meeting him. So I flew out, got Dan, came back in. We got Randy, who was up in a field, perched out with his thermal camera, I believe, and we went down to camp. And I believe at that point it was about 3 a.m. in the morning. We got back to camp, and poor Dan was just exhausted and tired. He had just drove all the way down from Wisconsin, and of course, me and Randy are like, "Hey, man, it's good timing. You ready to go out? Let's do this." And of course, Dan was like, "Okay." Of course, he said yes. we literally walked down this trail from camp. We were maybe, I don't know, 1,000. I usually say it's about 1,000 yards, maybe 1,500 yards from camp. And Randy, we would stop on the way down this trail, and Randy would just do a scan with the thermal. And Randy's thermal is set up on a pole, so you just have to turn the pole and you look at a screen that's hanging on his chest around his neck, so that we don't. It allows us to look at the screen and not look at the target, right? So what Randy found in a previous situation was that if you turn your back to these things, they will expose themselves a little more. You know, they'll peek out and show their bodies a little more, their heads a little more, what have you.
Okay.
So this particular time we did not do that, and we this had already happened several times. Like, we had been watching these things on thermal, but we weren't trying to approach them yet. And this was the first time we'd done this, and me and Randy had been talking about it for some time. And for whatever reason, that particular night, we got to this spot. He did a scan, and he's like, "Oh, I think we got one." He was seeing this head popping up and down, and this particular spot was wide open. There was nowhere for this thing to go without being completely exposed. It had flooded recently, and the waters from this creek had went up into this field and created all the low spots. All the foliage had been pulled down and matted down, so the higher areas that left these like lines of high grass that were, 1.5 to 2 foot tall, and it was laying down behind one of these, popping its head up, looking at us, keeping an eye on us. And we were literally like 100 feet from this thing. So in that moment, I just kind of made the decision. I said, "Randy, I'm gonna walk out to it. I'm gonna do this." And our plan wasn't just to walk out to it. Our plan was to go out about halfway, sit down, and like turn my back and sit down to it, and let Randy and Dan kind of watch it, and keep an eye on it and see how it's reacting. So,
Oh, we lost him.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, it looks like it.
hello.
There he is.
Hello.
There you guys are.
Yeah.
Did I cut off?
Yep, you did.
All right, where was I at?
Yeah.
You were talking about you were headed out. You were going to sit down.
You're going to go sit down.
Okay. Yeah. So the idea was kind of a Jane Goodall approach. I would go halfway out, turn my back to it, and sit down, see how it's reacting and whatnot. And then I would eventually, over time, if we had the opportunity to do this over and over, eventually, I would get a little closer each time. Well, that night I walk out and I go to sit down, and like my body would not let my butt touch the ground. The bottom of my feet did not want to leave the flat surface of the ground, like Italy. So I was having a hard time talking myself into actually sitting and being immobile. So I just squatted down, so I still had my feet underneath me, And I was a little nervous, for sure. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. So I'm sitting there, and Randy's talking to me, and of course Randy's like, "It's acting nervous." It's and I'm like, "Oh, great, that's all I want to hear."
That's my energy. Great, awesome.
Yeah. So this is about a 15-minute ordeal. So about 6 or 7 minutes went by, and or 4 or 5 minutes maybe, and I walked back to Randy and Dan, and we're all like super excited and stuff, and it's still popping its head up, keeping an eye on us. So I said to Randy, I said, I think I'm gonna walk all the way out to it. The head looks fairly small, so we think it's a juvenile, and those are the ones that we're usually catching out there, was the juveniles. And Randy is like, he's kind of trying to talk me out of it. It's too soon. What if we ruin the situation and freak them out? And so I just kind of made the decision right then and there. I was like, let's do it. I'm not going to walk all the way up on it, but I want to see how close I can get. Maybe it'll get up and run, and we'll get a full thermal shot of it. And we'll have a size compared to me, and
sure.
That's not what happened. I started walking out. I made my way within about 8 foot of it, And so the grass line is sitting perpendicular to me, and this thing is laying down like this behind it and sticking its head up towards the top of the grass, like looking through the upper part of the grass at me. I actually hit it with my flashlight, and I could see in its eyes actually sheen back. They were, it sheen back a gold color, and it had like a silver in the center. That happened twice as it was popping its head up. And then I decided that in that moment, because it wasn't acting really like super sketched out, it wasn't trying to run or anything. So I thought, I'm going to take a few steps forward and to my left, because I could tell by the way where its head was that it was laying with its feet away from me. So my thought process was, I'll take 4 or 5 steps this way and inward, and I'll look over and I'll look at the backside of it, right? And I'll be able to see how big it is and, get a size and all that good stuff. And so I don't know, it was my 4th or 5th step. As I'm putting that step down, I hear what sounds like teeth clacking together just once, and it was very loud. It was like a care. And as I made that step and stepped down, as that happened, a rock came flying out from my left and like literally landed right beside me. And as my foot touched down, I just did a pivot and slowly walked back to the guys. That was enough for me.
Nope.
And not only that, but in that situation, like with that rock flying out of the wood line, that immediately told me that that's probably Mama or the other juvie, and they're telling me, "Hey, stop!" So I didn't want to push it any further at that point. So I just turned and walked right back to the guys, and we were really worried that like we may have just screwed our situation up and pushed a little too hard. Randy was just like, he was so worried about it. It was he thought, oh, we just did it. We just screwed the whole situation possibly. So when I get back to them, we immediately we pack up and we head right back to camp. We get back to camp, and Randy and Dan went to sit over near Randy's tent under an awning that we had up. I went to my tent, and as I'm coming back across to go back over to them, a rock flies down off the ridge and hits the side-by-side. And as I'm walking by it, or that was as I was walking by it, and then as I get to Randy and Dan, another one hits the side-by-side. So like right then, immediately, we knew and understood that they followed us right back to camp.
They followed you back to camp.
Yeah, they followed us right back from there. So in the end, that was a good feeling. That made us feel good because we knew at that point that we didn't scare them off. That they followed us right back and were willing to, mess with us and interact. And it didn't change anything. Actually, we had a situation that was kind of the same deal, except they came in within 20 yards of us to our camp. And we'd just moved camp, and we'd set our camp up where they could only get close in one spot. And the very first night it happened, and Dan was there, and me and Randy, and we had another guy there. And we had a rock fly into camp. Dan actually still has that rock. It bounced off my tent and rolled up to his chair. And so he still has it. I think he keeps it in his vehicle as a little memento, from that night. But we had one. We had him come in during the day that day at 2:00 in the afternoon, and I kind of got after one and got a camera on it, but we didn't get real good footage because it like dipped into a thicket, so you can like see it moving and stuff. But there's foliage and stuff in front of it, so it's not a good shot or anything. But later on that night, the rock came flying in, and that was kind of what kicked everything off. One of them made its way up to this thicket that's 20 yards from us and popped its head up, and Randy's like, "Here we go, you ready?" And I did the same thing. I walked out through this thicket, and Randy's I'm going out there with no cameras or nothing, just blind, right? It's dark. I'm going through this thicket that's about chest high, waist to chest high throughout it. And Randy's supposed to get me close, fairly close to where it was popping its head up. And as I'm coming out the backside of the thicket, I hear Randy say, "I think you're right where it was." And I'm like, "Oh no." So I pop out the backside. Yeah, I kind of turn and look over the thicket at the guys, and I start like trying to look into the thicket around me, and then all of a sudden I hear what, if you take the samurai chatter that Ron Moorhead put out, if you take that, okay, when you listen to that, it sounds excited, right? Whatever's making it sounds very excited, like, you know. This was the same thing, but not excited, like low key, like it was talking to me in a talking voice versus like yelling it out and being excited. If that makes sense. So
Okay.
it wasn't as high and mid pitched. It was more mid and low pitched, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Like
at the
deliberate
time,
and to the point.
yeah. And at the time, I remember we'd just gotten these headphones that have a mic on them, so me and Randy could communicate while we're doing this stuff. And you know, I say back to them, I'm like, did you guys hear that? Did you guys just hear that? And Randy's like, we don't know what that means. You know, back out, please back out. So I made my way back through the thicket to the camp, and that was the end of it. We, after I got back to camp and we're sitting there like, oh my gosh. And then we literally hear it running down the hill away from the back side of the thicket. So it was still, I just didn't get my eyes laid on it, but that was the last time that something like that had happened, unfortunately. But
Well,
it was
Shane's
amazing
notorious
when it was happening.
Yeah, he's notorious for taking off in the woods. He's done that to me a time or two. He's like,
Won't
you
leave
got my
you
back,
alone, though.
right? No, not leave me alone. No, he just takes off. You know, we have 2 or 3 shots of what he was chasing one night, and we can't play the video because we would have to bleep the whole thing out because of his
colorful language.
His colorful language. Yes, exactly. We were we were with several people, but it had ended up, it was Shane and I and his girlfriend, and Robert is down, I don't know, he's about 20 feet, 30 feet from us. And so Tara and I kept hearing something moving, and Shane finally gets the thermal out and he's looking, and we're pointing saying, okay, yeah, he starts, like I said, we can't play it because we'd have to bleep the whole thing out. And I'm telling you, you cannot say that when I cannot see what you're talking about. So basically,
yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well,
no, you go.
So basically, he hands me the therm and says, it's this direction. Watch my back. I'm going in, right? And I'm like, and poor Tara, this is the first time she's ever been out. And I'm like, all right, got your back. Robert's, like I said, about, I don't know, 25 feet down the trail from us. And Shane, all of a sudden you hear, and it just echoes. Robert whirls around. I'm like, I got your back, yeah, with the therm, but I'm following him as he's going in, And so what was funny was he went and he looked, he came back, and we were like, that's it. We're going back to camp, right? Because you couldn't see what he had. And so we head off back to camp, and I'm like telling Robert, drive faster. And he's like, Shane's up my butt already. I mean, we're flying down these dirt roads, And what's funny is we get back, and I mean, Robert barely gets the truck stopped. I'm bailing out to get my laptop. Shane's running over with his little, card, and we're sitting there, and these are some of the still shots that came from that footage. This thing comes up out of the creek, stands up, holds onto that tree, looks around either side of that tree, is looking at us. We know we got the money here, right? We're about to lose our minds over this. And everybody's coming in and they're like, this is what you guys got, and yeah. So we were super excited about this. So he sends it off to a friend of his in Hollywood and had them look at it. And what was it? 3 frames in the 45 seconds that we watched it that you can see that is a bear. And when he told me that, I'm like, are you sure?
Bear.
Are we positive about this? We're sure it's not, he goes, it's a bear.
Bear. Yeah.
It's a bear.
Unfortunately. And
Yeah,
then
and
and
so
after the fact, I felt more sketched out about walking back there that night, right
Past the
after that
bear.
happened. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I walked right out there not knowing it was a bear, assuming it was a Sasquatch, and felt okay with that. But knowing afterwards it was actually a bear,
It's
that
a
kind of
bear.
sketched me out, recent bear.
Yeah.
right. It was a bear. Well, and the next night we're back
I
in
was
that
locked
same
in Boogers
area.
though.
Yeah, yeah, he was packing, so we were good. But next night, same thing happened just up on the hill with they had the drone out. The stinking thing was back in the area again, and I don't know what we had 15 people out there that night, and that stupid
Hmm.
bear's just up there on the hill,
Hallelujah.
type deal. So, no, we don't
Looking for a
always get
picnic
what we're looking
basket.
for. Right, right. Hey, boo boo. But we're
Yeah, I
not.
don't have much quarrel. I don't have much quarrel with trying to get near these things. I personally, you have to understand too. Like I've been in this situation in the 400 where we've been able to do that, and a few times, and nothing bad ever came of it. So I've kind of conditioned myself to, um, or that has kind of conditioned me to kind of let my guard down, and not have the fear of walking out and trying to get close to these things. And it's like as
Yeah.
long as
Well,
I don't die, I'm good. I wake up in the hospital. I'll be like, hell yeah, did I get the shot? Did I
I
get the
got the
footage?
right. Did you
was
get
my
it? Did you get
GoPro
it?
good?
Yeah, right.
Well, Shane,
Yeah, that's what
talk
he
real
always
quick
tells me.
about um the twists with the twigs
Hmm.
The tree breaks.
and the twists.
Okay.
What did you say?
So the tree breaks and twists. Yeah.
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 So, um, so I was finding these. A lot of people find these, and we really don't have any explanation for them, or any information. We kind of find them, and that's it. We don't know why or how they're doing it and whatnot. But I, in my old research area, was lucky enough to. I was following a set of tracks one day of compressions, and they were going, this direction, and I come across a twist on the right side that had been broken, and 15 yards down, I find the piece that had been broken off, and I went back and looked at it, and put it back together, and really made me start thinking, because the first thing that told me was that it used its right hand. And so then I had to figure out, well,
Okay.
how are they reaching out and grabbing these? And there was no stop in the stride. The stride stayed exactly the same, which told me that it happened in stride, in motion, right? So
Okay.
now my next thought is like, how are they reaching out and twisting these? Breaking and reaching out and breaking it is nothing. That's no big deal. But how are they twisting them? Like that doesn't make sense. And what I figured out is when they reach out, they have to go thumb down when they grab them, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
they break and twist and pull. And so from what I could tell, it's like in stride as their arm comes out, they're reaching out and grabbing these saplings and twisting them and breaking them in motion, like in stride. There was no break in the
Okay.
stride whatsoever. And in that particular area, I found, several more of those throughout the time I was there, and every single time it would be on the right side, which told me that particular individual was most likely right-handed, right?
Yep. Exactly.
So that was another interesting little thing that, like, do they have a right or left hand? Are they ambidextrous? Are they dominant on one side? Are they not? So just like another little clue into them, I
Okay.
guess.
It's like a
That
territory marking their path, or are they just walking along and just,
you know what, it really
you
seems
know, what do you
like
think?
there's not even a thought process behind it. Like they do it instinctively, like it's a tick or something, you know?
Sure.
Like I said,
Okay.
it's in stride. So it's
Yeah.
almost, I mean, it's almost like they're reaching out and using stuff to help pull them forward, if that makes sense, you
Yeah.
know? but these are small twists and breaks, so I don't think that that's the case. But that's what it
Yeah,
would be like. They're doing it
right.
in stride, in motion. They're not stopping
Okay.
and I think I'll do this here. It happens almost. It seems like it's non. It's like not. It's like instinctively, like they don't think about it. They just do it.
Okay.
They
Could be
just
wrong, but
All right.
Well, so
Interesting.
it's been all kinds of information tonight. We're getting close to our time. So, Shane, do you have anything coming up that you want to promote?
I'm doing this conference for this weird lady here coming up real
Uh-huh.
soon.
Hey, I know that weird lady.
Oh my god! Oh,
You
there
Yeah,
it
do.
is. There it is.
there it
Yeah, yeah,
is.
yeah.
There it is.
So
Exactly.
I'm kind of one of the common speakers so far at this, and it's just because I'm here and I research locally, and Mary wants to keep like the local vibe, really involved in her conference, which I think is awesome. But yeah, there it is. Come out and see us, and come out and meet all the speakers. And we got a camp out afterwards that we're doing, and on
My
the
first
property in
one.
Boogers County. Oh, you're
Yep.
coming?
Yep.
Awesome, awesome.
Yep. Jennifer's
So
going
we'll
to
be
come
there
camp
for, is that
4
4 days, right,
days.
Mary?
4
Uh huh.
days. Yep. Yep.
And it's an
4
area
days.
where we've had activity in the past.
We've had
Some
one come through the camp the first year we camped out there. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I,
like,
I
Dang.
I literally track this thing all the way around our camp. And when you get
yeah,
out there, you'll see how big this field is, and you'll be like, "Wow, it took some time for it to make its way all the way around camp." And we think there was a juvenile out in the middle of camp also, that we'd have to tell that whole story for it to make sense. There was or
Okay.
the kitchen, the camp kitchen tent, which was it was just huge, got
yeah.
completely destroyed in a storm the night before. So there was food and stuff everywhere out in the middle, and we think the juvie was out there in the middle collecting food while the adult was walking the perimeter, keeping an eye on everybody.
Yeah.
So it was
Ah.
interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
we go out to this property and we've had activity. We've had all kinds of things. I mean, we'll bring Shane back and talk about some more of the stuff that's happened out there. But that is the Ozark Mountain Bigfoot Conference. Shane's going to be a speaker at that. He's also going to go out and camp with us out there. So if anybody's interested in that, go on to, you can get part of the tickets at Eventbrite if you just want to come to the conference or the VIP night. That is at eventbrite.com. If you want to camp with us, you have to go onto the Ozark Mountain Bigfoot Conference page and privately message us because that's a very small group that we take out there. We try to keep that small. And if you're interested, reach out. We'll be glad to talk to you about it. Shane does have, so
Our
what is your
website.
Facebook? Yeah, your website. If you want to
Yeah,
tell
I
them
have a
what your
website.
website
OzarkMountainSasquatch.com. We have some tracks and some prints and stuff on there, and links to videos, and John Morley's papers. We have a few of his papers on there right now, and this paper on the feet and the morphology of the feet's going to be coming out soon. So like keep an eye out for that for sure. OzarkMountainSasquatch.com. And then Randy Harrington's YouTube page is the Sensible Bigfoot Project. That's another place you can go. Like Randy's got so many videos on there. He does interviews, but he has tons and tons of research videos on there that are from the 400 and current stuff that he's doing. And Randy, anybody that knows Randy knows he's always out and he's always doing stuff. He's one of the best researchers out there. So definitely go check out his YouTube channel and give it a like and a share, and OzarkMountainSasquatch.com.
and also where
Awesome.
can they go watch Into the 400 at? Is that on Amazon?
Yes, that's on Amazon Prime. You can go and watch that, and you'll laugh a little bit. It was done when we first started researching the 400 and realized there was a lot of crazy stuff going on. So it's real amateurish. You'll get sick at times. You'll get stomach sick from all the hustle and bustle
But
of
you
the
learn a
cameras.
lot. You learn a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we hadn't really planned on like making a documentary. We were just, you film
Right.
everything in case you catch something. So we just kind of did it
Exactly.
because we wanted people
Exactly.
to kind of see the beginning of what was happening out there. So but
Exactly.
it's there.
Yep.
Go check it out.
Go check it out. Well, and of course, we want everybody to go to Area 52 TV and watch us, or you can come on. We have a YouTube page. It's just Marianne Ziebell, and we've got the Bigfoot, Wildman, and Boogers show on that. So we want everybody to come out, check us out, give us a like, subscribe, all those good things. So, Shane, thank you so much for coming tonight. And it won't be that long before we're out in the woods. You're welcome. So everybody have a good night. And like we always say, show me your Bigfoot.